Hello everyone, this is Dr. Haugeberg. I am the Assistant Professor of Low Brass at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. My website and email are below if you have any questions or would like some further information later. This presentation, general practice tips for learning repertoire, fundamentals, and pretty much everything else you'll need to play. So, some general practice tips. First, be deliberate, have a plan, and schedule times for regular practice sessions. You should have at least one of those practice sessions devoted to fundamentals every day, along with one or two sessions devoted to other literature, being etudes, solos, excerpts. And remember to focus on what you need to work on in your fundamental sessions and all of your other sessions. Playing only what you do well won't help you grow as a musician. Don't forget to put your phone on Do Not Disturb or airplane mode, or use it to record yourself so it's out of reach, because the Insta can wait. Also, mental focus wanes after 24 minutes of intense effort. A 6-minute break will do wonders for your concentration, and it's a scientifically proven method to help keep your concentration at its peak. Note that when you take these 6-minute breaks, you should take them outside, looking at nature or meditating somehow. Looking at a screen can actually have an adverse effect and not actually help regain your concentration that you lost. Slow practice makes fast progress. When practicing, alternate between small chunks of 1 to 2 measures and large sections of 8+ measures, and always go ahead and put those smaller parts back into musical context when you're done. Record yourself regularly to assess your progress and focus your efforts. Remember, if you're struggling with motivation, listen to how much better you are than a previous recording. And finally, from Aristotle, if we are what we repeatedly do, then excellence is not a virtue, it's a habit. So here are some common practice issues. Most errors in practice and performance usually stem from one of 3 areas. It's a musical error, a mechanical error, or a mental error. Musical errors are usually rhythmic, having to do with the tempo, subdivision, maybe an uneven rhythm. A musical error can also be oral. Maybe the player is unable to sing the phrase or hear the next pitch. And it could also have something to do with the clarity of audiation. This could mean it's difficult to hear the front of the note, the sustain, the decay, or other stylistic elements that we need when we perform. Mechanical errors usually relate to posture and other physical issues. That can be tension from bad posture, or it could also be tension that comes from your emotional state or being fatigued. It also can happen from uneasy or tense breathing. You can also have mechanical issues related to the instrument. Maybe there's a misunderstanding of the instrument somewhere. Or an operational issue that's related to posture. Or maybe the instrument's in a state of disrepair, of low quality, or unmaintained, so it's not working properly. Mental errors usually stem from focus. Perhaps the player has drained their psychic energy or mental energy. Or maybe they have too much mental energy going on. Or maybe they've misdirected their focus. The other issues can also be emotional. When we perceive something through a specific emotion, we get distorted feedback and selective feedback, and we can even distort our focus. Finally, other mental errors could be related to a misaligned body map. For more information on that, check out Feldenkrais, Alexander, yoga, and many other practices. Here are some other errors that can occur. Here are some common errors to avoid. You are what you repeat, so make sure you're not putting garbage in, because then you'll get garbage out. Repetition and mental breaks around difficult passages can happen for a bunch of reasons. Sometimes there is too much segmented practice around that isolated issue that hasn't been put back into a larger context, which creates a mental hiccup. Or there's too little segmented practice around the difficult passage, and the errors are random as you approach it. Or finally, it could be emotional. or a mental yip as you approach that passage. So, the one practice method I suggest to get rid of these issues is synthesis, analysis, synthesis, or big picture, little picture, big picture. Also, remember, accuracy of repetitions are more important than the quantity of repetitions. Remember, the A team went on for many seasons, and in the entire run of the show, only one person was ever hit by a bullet, even though millions of shots were fired in the show, and that person walked away in the next scene. Or imagine stormtroopers. Neither of them are known to be very accurate. Here are some practice methods that could help. Chunked or blocked practice is perhaps the most common. This is where you repeat something consistently until it's fixed. Graphically, it would look something like this. This method may be the most used, but it's actually scientifically proven to be the worst for long-term retention of knowledge or mechanical skills. Well, why do we do it? It makes us feel good. We get immediate satisfaction from that practice session. So we feel like we're progressing, even though the next day we come back, we're not going to be playing at the same tempo we left it. According to science, the best way to practice actually is interleaved. Graphically, it looks something like this, where you start with a set of material that you're working on, and then you go to something different, and then come back to that same material, and you keep interleaving it. You can do this randomly through any number of subjects. In fact, according to science, the more disconnected the subjects, say working on physics homework, and then practicing trombone, and then reciting some poetry, would make it so the gains that you have in the practice session are more durable. Now, it's not used as often because it takes more time to set up, and it doesn't make us feel good. We don't get immediate gains or satisfaction, but over time, we end up with durable, long-term gains that we keep from week to week. Another great practice method is called chaining. Now, this is most often used chaining forwards. We start with one note, we play that note and the note afterwards, that note and two notes afterwards, until we've gone through the entire piece, the passage, whatever we're working on. Now, this is very helpful, but chaining forwards is actually one of the worst ways to chain, because as you start with something you know and go into something you don't know, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you make a lot of mistakes, that can erode your confidence. That's not going to be the best way to make you feel better about your playing, yourself, and make it so it works out. So in fact, if you do the same process but start from the end note and then add the note before the end note and the last note, it will build your confidence because you're working from something you're learning into something you know. This is a great way, again, to build player confidence. And the final way to chain is to center it around a difficult shift, a difficult technique, maybe an alternate position you're learning to incorporate into a passage. This is perhaps the most effective for putting a passage into context and working out those little musical errors that we've had in the past. Other practice methods that I really enjoy, varying the material. Now, you can vary this rhythmically by alternating speed throughout the passage. You can play one measure at full tempo and the next measure at half tempo. Some other speeds could also work as well. Or you could play through by putting a fermata on the first note of each note grouping, or the second, third, and fourth, giving your brain a second to pause and process the upcoming information. And finally, one that I really like is called rhythmatize, and it looks something like this when applied to Clark 2. If you want a better version of that PDF, go ahead and send me an email. Also, other variations can be changes in articulation, playing something slurred that was formerly staccato, working on it by glissing, removing articulation altogether. Or you can also vary it by changing the key or displacing the octave. This can give you a new perspective on that material. Some other practice methods, mental practice versus physical practice. Well, why not work on mental practice? There have been so many studies recently that talk about the effectiveness of mental practice that I think is really important in music. This mental practice is usually best when combined with physical practice. In fact, there was one study where weightlifters got better at lifting weight and were able to lift more weight by doing mental practice alone and didn't actually physically lift the weight. Whoa! Yes, now that mental practice was good, and it was better than not practicing at all. But it wasn't as good as when you paired the mental practice and the physical practice together. In fact, they found that when you had physical practice, where you were working on something for 30 minutes, or you had 15 minutes of mental practice and 15 minutes of physical practice, that you had statistically the same amount of muscle gains and ability to lift more weight at the end of the study. Here is a link and a citation for that article. So remember, don't discount mental practice. So what are methods of mental practice that we can use? Let's start with oral. So this could be either external or internal. You can sing the pitch, you can sing the phrase the way you want it to go, or you can audiate inside your head the same way you can visualize something when you close your eyes. If you can hear the pitches, that will help a lot. You could also do visualization. So you can visualize the environment while you'll be performing, or you can visualize your performance itself. That can be from the audience perspective or from your perspective. And finally, you can also mentally practice by using the kinesthetic motions of practice. This would be air movement, valve movement, slide movement, and you can combine this together with oral and visual activities. Now just remember that all the previous methods that I've talked about are meant to execute a set of actions. It's not meant to help you with musical interpretation or developing musical understanding or your expression. That's a different type of practice, and I think that's best left for your private instructor. Now, as I finish this presentation off, here's some recommended reading that I've really enjoyed or has helped me a lot. So some textbooks on focus, habit, and learning. This is, again, a short list, and I don't have time to go through all of them, so I'm going to focus in on one that I'm reading for the third time now, Atomic Habits. So here are some major takeaways that I got from it. Be more concerned with your trajectory than your results. If you're a millionaire and you spend more money every month than comes in, eventually you'll be broke. But if you're broke and you end up saving money every month, eventually you'll have money in the bank and could become a millionaire. Your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits. This means that our goals only come after we've established a system to reach those goals. Another important point, breakthrough moments are the buildup of many previous actions. The example that James Clear used was that of an ice cube sitting on a table in a room that was 0 degrees. If we move around or start a fire and try to heat up the room, it might go from 0 degrees to 31 degrees, but nothing actually happened to the ice cube. Not until it hits 32 degrees Fahrenheit and all of a sudden it turns into water. So remember that we might not see the change until it all happens very quickly. Also, problems changing your habits are more about the system that you employ than they are about you. And you don't rise to your goals, you fail to the level of your systems. Another important point of the book, habit stacking. After I do one certain habit that I do all the time and never miss, I will do another habit. By employing that, you're able to go ahead and get multiple habits that you want to form over a long period of time. Some other parts of the book that I'll briefly cover. How to build a habit. Well, a habit is broken down into 4 phases. A cue, craving, response, and reward. For the cue, you want to make it obvious. For the craving, you want to make it attractive. And for the response, you want to make it easy. And then, to make it satisfying, you reward yourself. If you want to break a habit, you would invert that. You would make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. This is a very brief synopsis of a wonderful book that you can reread many times, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Here are some other books that I recommend. Some on mental focus, and some books and blogs on musical practice itself. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, send me an email, visit my website, and I really appreciate your support.